Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brittnee. Today's video is a tutorial for the mango sticky rice filling that I put inside the chocolate bonbons from my last video. This filling was inspired by my recent trip to Thailand, and it's a bit of an experimental flavor. The two recipes we'll go over today are a mango fruit gel, which is just blended mango pâte de fruits, and then a coconut white chocolate ganache with added coconut sticky rice. And the experimental part is the rice. To really represent the dessert of mango sticky rice, I really wanted to somehow include that chewy sticky rice texture. Kind of like if you've ever had a coconut rice gelato. It actually has bits of rice inside. I wanted it to be similar to that, but I got to thinking and realized that rice absorbs water, and water is pretty much the enemy of shelf life. So I don't know how shelf stable this ganache is with the rice in it. If I had an AW meter, I would test it, but I don't have one yet. If you want to extend the shelf life, maybe go without the rice and just use the coconut white chocolate ganache. Anyway, let's get started with our mango sticky rice bonbon filling. Here are the supplies that you'll need. We'll start with the mango pâte de fruits. You'll need some unsweetened mango puree. You can buy it, or today I'll show you how to make it yourself using frozen mangoes. Some sugar. I'm using castor because it's super fine, but you don't have to. Glucose syrup. Citric acid. Pectin. There are lots of different kinds, so to make it simple for you, I'm using one that you can easily find at your grocery store, so you'll get the same result as me. A silicone baking mat, a nice pot, a whisk, a high heat spatula, a micro scale and regular kitchen scale, a fine sieve, a nice thermometer, and a refractometer, which is helpful, but not completely necessary. Before I make my puree, I'm actually going to measure out all the ingredients for my pâte de fruits. If you want to download a PDF file of my recipe, I'll link that in the description box below. I'll start with my citric acid. You'll see the amount on the recipe for the citric acid is for a citric acid solution, not just the citric acid itself. The solution is equal parts citric acid and water. The recipe calls for 8 grams, so I'm measuring out 4 grams of citric acid and 4 grams of water and mixing them together. Next up is pectin, and we'll need 12.5 grams. Now I'll measure the sugar, and I switch scales because I need 575 grams of this, and my micro scale actually only goes up to 200 grams. Now I add 50 grams of my sugar into my pectin bowl and stir that around. And then I measure out 100 grams of glucose syrup. Now all of our ingredients are measured except the mango puree, so let's make that now. When all is said and done, I'll need 500 grams of puree, so I want to be sure to make more than I need for the recipe. I just eyeballed how much mango I put in the pot, but measured it for your reference, and it looks like I started out with around 2 pounds or around 900 grams. The puree is really easy and simple to make. You just heat up the frozen fruit until it gets soft and a little bit juicy. took me around 12 minutes, and just to be sure it was soft all the way through, I tested it with a fork. Next, just blend it up until it's completely smooth. Push it through a sieve to catch any larger fruit fibers. And the last step is to bring the puree to a boil for about a minute or so. This is a little pasteurization step to kill bacteria. At this point with purees, you could freeze this to use it at a later time or refrigerate it if you do this step ahead of time. But today I'll be using it right away, so I'll measure out 500 grams. And right away, I'll add that straight back into my pot and bring the temperature up to around 50 degrees Celsius or 122 degrees Fahrenheit. As I'm whisking, I'll slowly add in the pectin sugar mixture a little bit at a time and then stir that in really well. Now I bring the mix to a boil and begin adding in all of my sugar, which is the castor sugar and the glucose syrup. I microwave my glucose for around 10 seconds to warm it up a little. This makes it easier to pour out of the container and also won't cool down my mixture in the pot. Then I patiently add in the castor sugar in just small amounts as I whisk. The pectin we're using is not heat reversible, so once it heats up and then cools down, it cannot be remelted without losing its powers. So add in the sugar really slowly and carefully so the temperature of the mixture doesn't drop too drastically. Once all of the sugar is added in, it's a game of stirring and waiting until you get to your target temperature. Occasionally measure that. You're aiming for it to get up to around 105 to 107 degrees Celsius or 221 to 224.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and measuring around 75 bricks. If you don't have a refractometer, you can just go by temperature. But temperatures will be different at different altitudes. So for example, my mixture actually only got up to around 103 to 104 degrees Celsius before it was measuring above 75 bricks because I'm in Utah. So you may have to experiment a bit with the temperatures until you get what you want. The longer you cook it, the higher the concentration of sugar will be. Once you hit your temperature or bricks measurement, immediately add in your citric acid solution and whisk that in really well. Then just pour the mixture out onto a silicone baking mat and leave it to sit. After a couple hours, this is what my mango pâte de fruits looks like. It's a bit softer than you'd want it if you were actually going to cut it up into squares and eat it like this. So to make this into pipeable gel, blend it up in a food processor or use a stick blender. This step is easier said than done, depending on the equipment that you have. And if anyone has any processing tips for this, please share with all of us in the comments, because I think my food processor, which honestly isn't the most high-end one anyway, finally had enough of me and stopped working during this step. So I actually finished the job using my Baymix stick blender, but I really didn't want to break this too because it's brand new. So I was super careful while I did it. My technique was to blend just the top layer so I didn't overwhelm the blades and motor, and then mix it up and then just keep blending the top layer. That way all the jelly didn't just get jammed and stuck into the blender. And once it's a smooth consistency like this, you can pipe it right away into your shelled chocolate bonbons. Now for the coconut sticky rice white chocolate ganache, you will need sweet sticky rice, coconut milk, coconut cream, heavy cream, glucose, you can use either dry or liquid, dextrose powder, sorbitol powder, some white chocolate, I use Calibut, CW2 white chocolate, some cocoa butter, and a little bit of salt. Just a couple things before I show my process to make the ganache. I actually made this sticky rice ganache twice. I used the first recipe to fill the bonbons, but then I ended up not being fully happy with the texture and formulation of that recipe. I wanted to be able to share a recipe with you guys that I was more happy with, so I made some adjustments and made it again. So the footage I'll be showing you here of the process is the second recipe, the one that I think turned out a lot better. But when I show footage of me filling the bonbons, that's the first recipe, just so you know. You might notice the consistency's a little bit thinner in the first recipe than in the second one. Before doing anything else, get the rice cooking because it can take between 40 to 50 minutes to do. I used my good old trusty rice maker, but you can also do this on the stove if you want. I add 1 cup dry rice to 1 3/4 cups coconut milk, and I start it at 40 minutes. While the rice cooks, I get started on the ganache. I measure out 415 grams of white chocolate and 5 grams of pure cocoa butter. Also note that if you use a different brand or type of chocolate, it can change the texture of your ganache, so you might have to experiment and make some adjustments. Next, I take 200 grams of coconut cream and reduce it on the stove down to 100 grams. This lowers the water content, increases the fat content, and intensifies the coconut flavor. So simmer, 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 and occasionally check the weight until you get to around 100 grams. I add the reduced coconut cream straight back into my pot along with 80 grams of heavy cream and a couple pinches of salt. In a small bowl, I measure altogether 10 grams glucose, 10 grams dextrose, and 5 grams sorbitol. And I must have accidentally been backwards on when I pushed the record button on my camera during this part, so I missed recording it, but all I did was place the pot on the stove, turn the heat to around medium, sprinkle in the dry sugars, and stir them in really well. Then all I do is heat up the mixture until it's simmering around the edges and about 80 degrees Celsius or 176 Fahrenheit. I pour the hot cream right over the white chocolate and let it sit for about a minute to start melting. Now I stir it up and then process it really well with a stick blender to get rid of any unmelted chocolate bits, and then continue blending to get a smooth emulsion. The sticky rice ended up cooking for 50 minutes before all the liquid was gone. I took off the lid, fluffed it up a bit with a fork, then let it sit to cool a little bit. While the rice sat, I also let my bowl of ganache sit to cool down a little bit as well, stirring it occasionally so that no film developed on the top surface and it cooled evenly. The ganache needs to be below 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit before piping into the shells, so once it gets close to that, just stir in the sticky rice. I stirred mine in 1/2 cup at a time. You can add less or more depending on what you prefer, but I ended up using almost all of the rice that I made, which was about 2 cups for the whole recipe. If you're not into the sticky rice, you don't have to add any at all. So I set aside a sample of the ganache without rice and also a sample of the ganache with the rice. Since this was the second try at this recipe, I wanted to be able to show you guys what it looked like once it sets up. Remember, what I'm piping in here is the first recipe and was a little bit runnier, but the technique that ended up working for piping was to use a gloved finger to block the piping bag, then move between cavities and let it flow into the bonbon. I let my filling settle and the ganache crystallize overnight in my wine cooler before capping them with white chocolate. Here are the recipe samples that I made to show you. These are also a day later after sitting in my wine cooler. The texture turned out great, really creamy, and here's how it looks with the rice. Now I'll cut open the bonbons to see how that mango gel looks. All right, guys, there you have a chocolate bonbon recipe for mango sticky rice. I hope that you enjoyed today's video and that you learned something new. If you did, let me know by leaving me a comment and liking the video. It helps me out a lot. If you try either of these recipes, be sure to let me know how it goes. I hope that you like them. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just go ahead and click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye!